Hello everyone and welcome to Dr. Anum AI. I am Dr. Anum, a PhD scholar and computer science specialist. On this channel, we decode the complex world of artificial intelligence and explore how technology is reshaping our future. Let's dive into today's video. When treating neurovascular diseases, survival depends on catching microscopic lesions in the brain. But in the earliest stages of the illness, these physical markers are so faint on a standard MRI that they routinely evade human detection. By the time these lesions grow dark enough to cast a visible shadow on a scan, the surrounding tissue has already begun to necrose. The window for early intervention closes, and the disease progresses past the point of treatability. Dr. Aris Thorne spent a decade directing a neurology ward, watching patients arrive with severe symptoms that should have been caught months earlier. Every late diagnosis represented a systemic failure that deeply frustrated the medical team. The fault lay in the sheer volume of the workload. A clinical radiologist reviews up to 100 scans a day, translating to tens of thousands of cross-sectional images. By hour 8, the optic nerve and visual cortex experience cognitive fatigue. Processing speed drops and critical anomalies blend into the gray static of the scan. Thorne recognized a hard biological limit. The human eye cannot process that volume of low-contrast imagery with sustained accuracy. A new diagnostic methodology was required, one decoupled from human exhaustion. The team began designing an artificial neural network. The goal was to build an algorithm trained to read the spaces between the pixels, locating the data hidden within the medical imaging. The tragedy of neurovascular decay is that the evidence of its arrival is often already captured on a hospital hard drive. Patients slip through the cracks because of a gap between the imaging data we collect and the human processing capability required to read it. Moving from the hospital ward to the data lab, Thorne's team accumulated over 200,000 historical MRI scans. Training a diagnostic system requires an overwhelming volume of raw visual history. They routed this unstructured imaging into a blank slate neural network. At this initial stage, the algorithm has no knowledge of anatomy or medicine. It interprets the brain as grids of mathematical values. The untrained network begins by guessing, shifting grayscale pixel tones to see which patterns correlate with disease. Early on, it fails consistently, aggressively lighting up healthy tissue along the perimeter in red. Using backpropagation, the algorithm mathematically adjusts its internal weights, punishing incorrect connections and clustering its focus toward actual microscopic anomalies near the center. While the machine silently adjusted its vectors millions of times a second, the human team was nearing a breaking point. Grant funding was evaporating, and months of monitoring Python code deep into the night induced severe mental exhaustion. An algorithm with a 92% accuracy rate is highly successful in consumer software. In a clinical setting, an 8% margin of error results in healthy people undergoing unnecessary brain surgery or sick patients being sent home without care. The system required a much higher level of reliability. After 6 months, the accuracy rate hit a ceiling. Adjusting the architecture of the neural network yielded no improvements. The team realized the flaw existed in the material, prompting a shift in focus toward the quality of the data itself. The initial training dataset suffered from dataset bias. Because those 200,000 scans came from a single regional hospital, the AI learned to diagnose a specific demographic. It failed to account for the genetic variations in skull thickness and tissue density found across the broader population. Thorne halted the computational testing to source records globally. The team spent a year negotiating with international hospitals, manually scrubbing and anonymizing millions of new diverse patient records. They expanded the input layers of the algorithm, making specific adjustments to the code to process this massive influx of demographic parameters without collapsing under the computational weight. In a pivotal test, Thorne uploaded a novel scan from an international patient. In mere milliseconds, the system locked onto a microscopic, ambiguous shape and bracketed it with a glowing square. The anomaly was so faint, the human researchers nearly dismissed it as background noise. The inclusion of diverse demographic records resolved the deadlock in the training process. By learning to account for global variations in anatomy, the AI could finally distinguish between a benign genetic trait and a microscopic lesion. 3 years after leaving the ward, Thorne brought a localized version of the server back to the clinical hospital setting for its first live patient application. An attending physician in the emergency room was reviewing the scan of a patient exhibiting mild neurological symptoms. To the human eye, it was impossible to discern whether a faint shadow was an artifact of the imaging machine or a deadly lesion. They routed the live scan into the trained network. The AI instantly mapped the patient's unique biology, cross-referencing those pixel gradients against the millions of corrected data points it had absorbed in the lab. The screen returned a definitive positive, detecting the disease months earlier than standard diagnostic protocols. The system provided the surgical team with exact anatomical coordinates, allowing them to perform an immediate, targeted intervention. The algorithm handles the pixel-level search for anomalies, bypassing the thousands of healthy scans that induce human fatigue. This allows the physician to verify the findings and move directly to treatment planning. The code functions as a functional bridge between invisible data and successful surgery. What began as a researcher's frustration in the hospital halls is now a tool that catches the lesions Thorne's eyes couldn't see. I hope you found this video insightful. If you are passionate about AI, healthcare technology, and professional research, make sure to subscribe to Dr. Anum AI and hit the bell icon for more expert insights. Feel free to drop your questions in the comments below. See you in the next one. Stay curious.